Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to The Hoon, where co-host Peter Bale and I go around the week's news in geopolitics and Aotearoa's political economy with a whole bunch of experts, academics and politicians, all to understand our worlds better and have some fun. Kia ora koutou katoa, everyone. It is fantastic to see you all for the final Hoon of the year. I'm Bernard Hickey with Peter Bale in a rural location.
Well, beachside location, I would say, Bernard. And literally, I had to come down to the beach to find a decent signal in order to do this, because I realised that the place, my friend's place, doesn't have Wi-Fi. So this is good. I'm sitting here with a glass of something. I'm looking at you instead of looking out at the audience gets to see the beautiful island off Hahe. I'm hoping to be that woman who did the extraordinary swim with half a dozen orca a few years ago. Although I guarantee that if an orca swam up to me, my Speedos would be unusable afterwards.
I suspect you'd be quite speedo in your Speedos to get the heck out of it.
I'd probably be running along the surface. Did you see, by the way, that there were orca yesterday in the Viaduct Basin, swimming around all the yachts and everything? So yeah.
I hope they got out of there alive without catching some disease of some sort.
No, it's extremely clean, as I can say, Bernard, partly because I went yesterday with our mutual friend Uta, from Waiheke, out with a day with sea cleaners, who were these, which is just an amazing charity I've been out with before. And you clean up plastic and rubbish and crap from all over Auckland Harbour. And as we were walking down yesterday at 6:30, I said, oh God, I hope they don't take us to the Foul River, because I've heard that's really disgusting. And of course that's the river that comes down through Avondale and New Lynn and has lots of industry backing onto it. And I can confirm it is disgusting. It's absolutely a wonderful waterway, and of course it's the Maori waterway, the waterway that Maori used to take canoes up to the portage and drag them over to the Manukau. They'd have to be doing it through a shitload of polystyrene and plastic and tyres and broken fridges and all sorts of other crap. But it was very good to do it, and when we got back to the viaduct, I was shown a couple of cleaning pumps that Sea Cleaners has in the viaduct, which actually makes it clean enough for humans and orcas, evidently, to swim in.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a few more people swimming there. Yeah. Well, I've actually just come back for a swim myself, but not at the normal beach. This was O'Neill's
Beach. My beach.
O'Neill's Beach, just past Bethel's beach on the west coast. So I have some very fine black sand between my toes. And I'm really looking forward to this final Hoon of the year, which is going to be extra special. Tell us about it, Peter.
Well, we've got some of our audience's best loved guests. Helen Clark, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, an all-round good egg, is coming on. Jodie Pagani, who's also a good egg, a former Labour spokesman and now working for a really important child charity. Professor Robert Patman, the Thinking Person's International Affairs head of Otago University, and my friend Elaine Monahan is joining us from Washington to discuss that. And we're going to, because we don't normally have this many people, we're going to run through a kind of list of things from the year in order to give each person, and I think I'll start with Helen on this one because I suspect she may not have headphones, and we'll give each person a prompt and break it into a couple of sort of segments where people can explain a few things that I've said to them in advance about their book of the year, their event of the year, and a few other things like that. And then we'll try to talk a little bit about domestic events. But with 5 people is an unusual number of people. And Simon, by the way, Helen has just messaged me to say she's waiting to be let in. So let's kick off and see who's there on the panel. Thank you.
We're getting
there she is, Josie. Oh my God, nice headphones, Josie.
Hello.
Hi, Helen.
Hello, how are you?
Yes.
Forgive me, Catherine, I forgot to introduce you as part of our fabulous lineup. God, it does look like the Brady Bunch. We used to do this in an organisation and we called it the Brady Bunch format. Elaine, welcome from Washington. Elaine, can you hear me? Elaine Monahan, calling Elaine Monahan.
So I think think she's
Elaine,
there.
are you possibly unmiked or unvoiced? Simon, can you flash Elaine? Catherine, are you in Wellington?
Yes, I am in Wellington. I've got horizontal rain and everything to prove it.
Excellent, me too.
Ah.
Oh, no, I haven't. Hang on. No. Robert, how are things in Otago, in
They're
Dunedin?
fine, thanks, apart from a cloudy day. But apart from that, it's great. It's good to see everyone.
Josie, those are fantastic cans, as we say in the business.
Thank you very much. They're very expensive. Nothing but
Good.
the best.
Good,
Yes.
excellent. Well, I saw you for the first time the other day at Helen Clark's Christmas party, and I
Yeah.
thought it would be fabulous to have you on again because you were so charming and you gave me a lovely hug since it was the first time we'd met in
It was
real life.
lovely, Peter. Yes, and it was a thoroughly enjoyable occasion. Great celebration of the work of the Helen Clark Foundation and Helen herself.
Yeah, and here she is. Helen, I think you're down at your dad's by the looks of it.
Yes,
I hope
yes,
everything's
I
good
am.
there. So you're back from, I think, Central Asia.
Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan.
Oh, cool. Was that a business trip or
Yeah, for one of the organisations I chair. Yeah.
Excellent. So Elaine, are you with us now? Elaine Monaghan, we can't hear you. You're going to have to go into your sounds settings and check your outputs and inputs. Okay, Helen. So I sent you some ideas for this last Hoon of the year, and of course you've become our key marketing symbol with your comment to me, like to your audience last week that the Hoon is a hoot. We wanted you to think about, and we'll do this and we'll go through all 5 of you in this segment, assuming that Elaine's back on the air and we can actually hear her soon. We'll do each of your responses for each question rather than get you to do the 5 questions individually, if you see what I mean. So, Helen, who was your person of the year? Bernard has one local and I have only a global one, I think, but he's done both. You go.
I hate to say it, but I'm inclined to agree with Time magazine that Trump is the person of the year. I mean, what a comeback from where he was, sort of accused of supporting an insurrection, going out of office, facing all those court cases, and hello, I'm back. So you've got to say it's a pretty incredible Lazarus act, as we often said in politics.
All right. Catherine, how about you?
Well, I've gone local, but mine's also, and I hate to say it, but my person of the year is David Seymour.
Elaborate. Did I say elaborate or exterminate? Elaborate.
No.
No, you didn't, Peter.
Don't tempt me.
Behave.
As a minority coalition partner, he appears to have the whole government by the tail. He's giving it a good old shake. Bit like a food bank at Christmas this time of year. He's trying to get some coin to drop out of it, and not terribly, but he's definitely giving it a good shake. And also, I think he appears to be in the process of pulling off one of the greatest long cons in New Zealand political history, with the regulations.
Did you say
bill.
rom-com? What, a rom-com or a
Long con. A long con.
Oh, a long con. I see. Yes. I was thinking it's Christmas. He was going to have a rom-com with Winston, which is, I think, what Bernard's doing. Yeah.
With the regulatory standards bill, which he opened up for consultation while we were all out protesting the treaty bill.
Right. Robert, what's your person of the year, global and/or local?
It's global
And why?
and local, I suppose, because we're affected by it. And the reason I've gone for this choice, I'll say in advance, is because I'm a great admiration of people who have political courage. And the reason for that reason, I've selected Francesca Albanese, who is the UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories. I've seen her, and I think many of you have also probably seen her, speaking up courageously for the Palestinians who don't have too many speaking up for them internationally. And I've just admired her steadfastness and her absolutely relentless pursuit of what I call the empirical truth. She's very, very, like a good lawyer, sticks to the script. And I think that we have a lot of politicians who blow with the wind and lots of public figures who do that, and I think it's just commendable how heroically she's performed.
Yeah, and it's also clear that she encounters a phenomenal amount of, shall we call it, shit from
She does, yeah.
the Zionist side of things. And I mean, she possibly as much as the head of the International Criminal Court. I mean, the chief investigator. I mean, it's the most extraordinary thing she's put up with. Your and my odd nemesis, common sense, is not going to like that, because he or she is always nagging Robert and I about our alleged bias against Israel. Josie, your person.
I've got yours are all very noble and heroic. Mine are slightly silly, but I was thinking who is not my person of the year, and I'm not saying this as a political partisan person, but because I want Luxon to succeed because I think the country needs it. But he's certainly not the person of the year. And you know how on the left we're always accused of campaigning in poetry and governing in prose. Well, he's kind of campaigned in prose and governed in chat GPT. You know, there's sort of plethora of quarterly plans and, sort of AI speak. So he's certainly not the person of the year, and he should be, and we need him to be. But so my person of the year, again, is a slightly weird one, and I think it illustrates the disconnect between voters and politicians, between institutions, the alarming lack of trust, or the decline in trust in politicians and institutions. Fiona Wilson, UK MP Fiona Wilson, who was in a poll just before the UK election, was voted as the most popular Labour MP in Parliament. She was apparently a Labour MP who had studied decolonisation at the University of Edinburgh and so on and so forth, and worked for an NGO. In fact, it sounds slightly like me, but turns out she doesn't actually exist. So she was made up, and she was plonked in this poll to see who of these people, Angela Rayner, Rachel Reeves, and then they shoved in this Fiona Wilson, who ended up getting 47% of recognition and popularity and favourability. So I just thought that was, Fiona Wilson is my person of 2024, given the year has been such a mess and such a chaos.
Well, I'm hoping that Helen and I are going to be spending some time with each other around New Year, and I intend to record her and turn her into a sort of Helen bot, so that she can be even more everywhere and on every topic. Bernard, what are yours?
Well, my people of the year locally is Simeon Brown. Simeon Brown is one of those politicians who has dominated the airwaves of the government. Appears to be a Energizer bunny within cabinet, pumping out decisions all over the place. Seems to have wrangled NZTA into his way of thinking, and is regularly coming up with policies which the entire sector of transport, energy, climate have no idea where he's coming from, completely don't agree, and he is just ploughing ahead. And the Prime Minister is letting him do it, and it's likely to lead to deaths of children at and around schools and on roads. It's increasing our climate emissions. It is going to damage our attempts to intensify our cities, and quite likely we'll get the government unelected, because he is alienating many people in national electorates with his speed increases around schools and his tolling of roads. And I think next year is the year that Christopher Luxon has to confront not only David Seymour and Winston Peters, but Simeon Brown.
You can't do... Oh, I see. Yes, can't do your prediction yet. Okay, is that your soliloquy now? And is there an international person of the year?
Oh, international. Of course, Donald Trump. And
Jesus, you've turned it into a soliloquy, yeah.
For all the reasons everyone else has, and I'll leave it at that.
All right. Elaine, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We can. Speak closely into your microphone. We can hear your gorgeous accent.
Well, thank you very much. So I feel like I should start with my global person of the year because it's a bit grim. But and it's Mazen al-Hamada, who is a Syrian man who I'm sure you've all heard of, who
the man who got killed went back and
Right, who
I'm sorry, tell us who he is.
protested against Assad very courageously and then was in jail and then got out and then came back and has since been discovered brutally tortured and killed. So I guess his life story, I think, will help us understand better over time what's actually happened in Syria. But we're not doing predictions just now, so I won't go any further.
No, we're not, Elaine. Stop. I've got enough trouble keeping Bernard on track, for God's sake. Sometimes keeping me on track is quite hard. Carry on.
And then Trump is the obvious one where I am located here in the United States, but I'm a little bit obsessed with what RFK is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to make him my American person of the year because it's so sort of unpredictable how that story.
And just say what just explain a couple of the things that he's done since he was nominated as health secretary.
Well, I mean, this gets me dangerously into prediction territory, and you'll shout at me.
Don't do that. Yep.
The topic that is giving me the biggest source of concern, frankly, right now is vaccines, and what's going to happen with that story. So.
Okay. Brilliant. All right.
Well,
thank you very much. I'm so glad we got you back there. Otherwise, we'd be doing this as a sort of Marcel Marceau session. Now, my person of the year, and I was thinking this as I was coming because it's coming to a close, is Gisèle Pellicot, the French woman who would appear to have been farmed out or farmed in by her husband in this extraordinary and awful rape case. I haven't actually been able to read very much of the testimony because it is so ghastly and horrible, and I have a thing about that kind of act. But her courage in sorry, I just took my baseball cap off for a minute because I've suddenly realised that I look like Al Brown, which you'll never do. I mean, she's been so extraordinarily courageous, and what I fear is that this happens much more than we would like to think it does, and it has forced, of course, France to take a good look at itself in terms of what rape is, and so I'm nominating her. But I will read the verdict, but I just haven't been able to read much of the evidence. Right, so we're going to go back in the same loop, if that's all right. Now, Helen, you've been so incredibly busy. Have you even had a chance to? I said to, well, in fact, sitting at my house, very near where Bernard is his bloody birthday present. Sitting there with it because he was supposed to come into my house today, with Bernard written on it in big letters. Helen, your book of the year or a book recommendation for people?
Yes, a book recommendation for those who are very interested in an independent foreign policy, as I am, is Terence O'Brien's memoir, Constellations of Insignificance, a New Zealand diplomatic memoir. Now, when I was a young MP, Terence was already a legend. He campaigned very hard when he was New Zealand permanent rep at the UN for New Zealand's position on the Security Council. This is going way back, I think, to the 90s period. And then for his pains, they put someone else in to be the PR who was actually there during the Security Council tenure. But, Terence was just such a font of common sense, very experienced, very measured, had a clear idea of New Zealand identity and how we could make our mark in the world. So that would be my recommendation for holiday reading.
Thank you. And was he the predecessor then to Gerard van Behemen?
Oh no, way back before that.
Oh, is this?
The predecessor to Gerard was Craig Hawke.
Yes.
And then before that was Jim McClay.
So have we been on the Security Council 3 times now?
Oh, I would say, at least. So, yes, this goes back to the iteration probably when we were on during the Rwanda genocide.
Yes, that's right.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Helen.
One of the great moments in New Zealand history that we set
Jesus,
up
Josie.
Yep.
This isn't a bloody group discussion.
Well,
here.
it should be, Peter.
Well,
I think you should revisit this sort of, sixth form, take your turn.
Yeah. What? Jesus.
Get a grip, Peter.
I admit I did actually go through sixth form, only just. Catherine, what's your book recommendation, or either from the... Because old Elaine texted me in a sort of panic this morning. Does it have to be published in 2024, or can I just say I read it in 2024? Catherine, go ahead.
I'm recommending a book that I'm planning to read over the holidays, so I haven't read it myself yet, and that is Tim Winton's Juice. It's a bit of a climate fiction. This book is actually one that Mike Joy recommended to me. He suggested it, but he also said that he found it too real and he couldn't hack it. And so
who's Mike Joy?
Dr. Mike Joy.
Yeah. Who's he?
Mike Joy.
Freshwater ecologist.
a big fan of the show and a subscriber, apart from anything else. So
Thank you very much, Mike. I can't wait to have you on as a guest.
He's up for New Zealander of the Year, so get your votes in. Yes. So I am all over this. I'm kind of like going, I reckon I can hack it, and I've put it down for my holiday reading.
Good.
Over summer.
Well, I can also say that if anybody is in Auckland, that Novel Bookshop in Jervois Road has many, many copies of Tim Winton's new book, Joyce, available. I'm not sure whether we have the Templeton book, but the Juice is definitely available at Novel. And this is, a word from our sponsor, not Robert.
My book of the year, and here I'm amplifying what Helen said, is also Constellations of Insignificance, a New Zealand political memoir. I think it's a tremendous book, and I got to know Terence in the mid-90s when he was at the director of the Centre for Strategic Studies, and he made a tremendous impression on me. And I think his book reflects the many fine qualities that he had. He was self-effacing, but at the same time, his sense of courage comes through. He was also quite blunt speaking for a diplomat. He was prepared to say things, speak truth to power, I think, that probably in the long run may have hurt him, but as a diplomatic career. But it's a remarkable book, very entertaining, and I think very thoughtful and full of interesting insights, which are very applicable as our current government tries to navigate the current international environment.
And Robert, did you tell me that when you recommended this or suggested it that he died this year?
He died in 2022, at the end of 22, I think on the 30th of December, and the book was published in May of this year. Cool. So, he was just, I think, a very influential person in this country. He had very strong principles, and I think, as Helen has said, that he was very much a person of tremendous integrity, and I think he articulated well New Zealand's distinctive vision of the world.
I think you and I, Robert, should consider writing possibly nothing huge, but a bit of a book about New Zealand diplomacy, because when I was about 11 and knew Helen when I was at the Evening Post, I was ludicrously the diplomatic reporter for a while, and you really knew.
At 11?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, I was
what
a bit
even
advanced
is that,
for my age.
Peter?
Yeah,
what even is
exactly. And but you knew who the head of MFAT was, who the head of each division was, and what their jobs were. And of course, it wasn't MFAT then. It was there was somebody else over at Trade, and I think from memory, Hugh Templeton at that point was the Trade Minister, and therefore incredibly important. Josie, your turn. Not that we're taking turns like in the sixth form.
Oh, sorry, okay. But just to follow on from what you said, Peter, getting an organogram out of MFAT these days is like getting gold, like to try and work out who actually heads each division. But anyway, that's an aside. So 2020, certainly over Christmas, I intend to read Complete Trash and watch wall-to-wall Netflix and Blob. But my book of the year would be Tony Blair's book on leadership. Which is who said that?
Sorry,
come on, I've triggered you. I've triggered you. But he's fascinating. Look, he's one of the best political analysts around, and he's one of the quotes there, which I think is brilliant. He said, "Being loved by the people is wonderful, but it's not the point of governing. Point of governing is to make changes that materially, socially, environmentally change the status quo. And by very definition of changing the status quo, you're not going to be popular all of the time." And I just think, whatever you think of Tony Blair, that is a brilliant analysis of leadership.
I'm just going to put my sunglasses on so you can't see my eyes rolling.
Oh, for goodness sake. Get a grip.
Keep the eye rolling quiet.
Yeah. But I did what the Tony Blair. This is kind of out of his work with the Tony Blair Institute, which I did some work for last year.
Exactly. I was just going to make. I'm glad you made that full disclosure that you fly around in the Blair Learjet from time to time.
I don't. I was in the shitty motel in Rarotonga while somebody from the Tony Blair Institute was in a nice motel. But and what he does is he goes into governments and helps governments fix political problems that are stopping them do the delivery of policy. Anyway, that's my book of the year.
Thank you. Elaine, what's your book of the year? And again, no, it doesn't have to be written in 2024. You can have read it in 2024.
Okay, so I did read an amazing memoir by a woman named Marsha Linehan, which has a very New Year friendly title, I believe, Building a Life Worth Living. She came from a very difficult teenage period and basically decided, having lived through a period of very severe mental illness, that she was going to rescue people from hell. That's how she described it, and made it her life mission to become a leading academic in psychology, and invented this new kind of therapy called dialectical behavioural therapy. So not only is it an amazing memoir about an incredibly interesting woman, but it also has tons of really practical advice on how to fix yourself.
It does sound. Yeah. What's your next one going to be? Eat, pray, read as well.
Oh,
Eat, pray,
stop!
love. Right.
I'm just going to let that one go. But
Now,
I will
when I
give you
suggest-
one other one since because I knew you were going to make a comment like that, which is my book that I'm going to read over the holidays, because I think we are all going to have to fantasize about leaving this planet next year, which is the Booker-winning novel by, and I've now forgotten its title, sorry.
Orbital.
Thank you very much. Orbital by Samantha Harvey, which is based on the International Space Station, which is probably where I will be going after this podcast.
And I regret to say that Novel Bookshop in Jervois Road has now run out of Orbital, partly because I bought 2 copies, one for a friend and one for me to bring away on this trip. So I will be reading Orbital. So, we have high turnover. Bernard, when I raised this with you, you said, Jesus Christ, I better read a book before the end of the year then.
Yes, I didn't defame our Lord when I said that, but I really struggle to read books. I am now one of those ADHD read headlines, and if I can get through an article, I'm doing well sort of guy, unfortunately. I didn't used to be, but I am now after 20 years of living online. My way to sort of deep dive into another world through a book, I suppose, is actually to listen to a narrative podcast. Mm-hmm. And the most striking event for me in terms of diving into something deep was listening to Toby Manhire's Juggernaut podcast that came out from the spin-off earlier this year. It was 8 hours of interviews and a narrative sweep through the fourth Labour government from 1984 to 1990. And it made me cry. It made me yell at my laptop. It made me want to ring up people and ask them whether that really happened. And for me, it was a compelling,
excellent,
definite thing. And by the way, while I've got you, before I get before Peter jumps in to say anything, I just wanted to say I'm so proud and pleased to see all of these wonderful people here on this final Hoon of the year. With amazing sound, apart from anything else.
That wasn't in the bloody running order, Bernard. We were going to leave that to the end.
But I'm just thrilled, and the reason I say this is that to have Helen Clark on the show, someone who was one of the people involved in that period, an extraordinary period in our history, on our show is for me a real highlight. So
didn't Juggernaut won the Serial of the Year in the podcast awards. Could you tell us who won the Silver Award in the New Zealand Podcast Awards in News and Current Affairs, Bernard?
The Hoon. And that's because the Hoon is a hoot.
Yeah, Helen, have you listened to the Juggernaut thing by Toby Manhire yet?
No, I haven't, and Toby didn't really pursue me hard for it. You know, I'm quite hard to get because I'm kind of busy. There might have been one outreach email which I forgot about, and so the next thing I knew, everyone was talking about it. But no, I haven't listened to it. Actually, I find the whole period's a bit painful, really. Michael Cullen did what is by all accounts a very good biography, and I read it up to the point of the episode of the 7 guilty men who appeared on the stage with the December 1987 economic statement, and then I had to put it down. It was too painful. So, Bernard, you had more fortitude than I did. I would probably cry through it too.
So yet again, you've made news on this. So Bernard, this time you can't let Helen making news that she only got to that chapter of Michael Cullen's, which as she says, what did you say, Helen? By all accounts, i.e., I just couldn't read it any further, and also she was missed from bloody Juggernaut. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, now I'm going to get hold of Toby, and he can do one of his special, or try to do one of his special
Helen's Revenge
interview with someone afterwards. There's been quite a few of these little postscripts that have come out after Juggernaut, which has made it so interesting.
Good.
And also, I completely agree with Helen about the car crash nature of it, the pain of listening to it, because I certainly wasn't as involved or didn't have as much at stake. But I was growing up as a journalist and as a teenager through that time, and actually forged a press pass and got into the press gallery Beehive Theaterette for the final press conference of David Longy, where he resigned and left. And it was the most electrifying thing I'd ever done. It made me want to be a journalist. And to hear the story behind the story of that period, for me, was
interesting.
Quite a thing.
So Bernard, I think I'm slightly older than you, so I was there reporting on it. And was Patrick Smelly covered in Juggernaut? Because he, of course, left journalism to work for Roger Douglas. Was he in there?
No, I'm not sure he was. I suspect Toby could just keep on doing interviews for the rest of
There's plenty of people with opinions on this out there.
Okay, so my book of the year is Richard Flanagan from Australia, from Tasmania, Question 7. It is probably the finest book I sold, many copies of, in fact, at Novel in Jervois Road. It's an extraordinary memoir that spans his father's life, his life, everything from H.G. Wells and his weird connection to both Tasmania and the nuclear program. John von Neumann is in there, and he also deals extraordinarily, as he often does, with the genocide against Tasmanian Aborigines. It is a relatively small book, but I suspect you'll find it is one of the most beautifully written books. And he's now said he's absolutely not sure that he may ever write again, which would be awful. The podcast, to be more intelligent, I listen to Past, Present, Future by British political scientist David Runciman, who I think is also a Viscount, or maybe a friendship, or some other aircraft. But it makes me feel much smarter when I listen to it. There's a couple of mistimed ones, but I find it reassuring, and also he's not American and he doesn't say right at the end of every sentence.
Good.
Okay, so where are we up to? We've got, here's the juicy one. Here's the very sexy one, Helen, because we're going to come back to you again. People also noticing that you're taking quite a lot of notes there, which I think is absolutely
I'm taking
brilliant.
notes for what to read and
Look
what
at
to
me.
listen to.
I was in a court case recently for various reasons, and I took notes throughout.
Peter?
No, took notes. Jesus, Josie, took notes throughout. And then I was with a lawyer the other night. She said, "You know, you're not allowed to do that when you're not actually in the press box." And I thought, oh my God. Right, Helen, predictions for 2025, the biggest stories and developments.
So for me, the biggest stories and developments are going to be how Trump handles both Ukraine and Gaza. Now, what we know about Donald Trump is he doesn't particularly like financing wars that he sees as other people's wars. Very much how he sees Ukraine, and I think very much how he sees Israel's war on Gaza. So, he wants out, but he wants the thing, both of them to stop. So how's he going to achieve this in ways that protagonists on both sides, in the end, will go along with, albeit, nobody will think it's a good deal, but he wants them to stop. So that's the story I'm going to be watching, both of those stories.
Thank you. Catherine? Helen. Wait a second. Helen, do you want to say any prediction for New Zealand in 2025 to make Bernard's next kaka the biggest one of the year?
I want to know what the strategy is to get New Zealand growing. We are so off track. I mean, the Herald headline today, we are in the worst recession. Leave aside COVID, which is a world-shattering experience, but this is the worst recession since Ruth Richardson's cuts in 1991. And I remember that acutely. I was deputy leader of the opposition. People said to us as local MPs after those benefit cuts took effect that they couldn't shift bread and milk from the shelves of the dairy. I mean, this is bad. Yeah. And so what is the strategy? I just see
Helen, it's all just part of the legacy of the wasteful Labour government.
Well, you believe in fairies in the garden too, I suppose. But I just can't see it. You look at, for example, the money thrown away on the tax breaks for landlords. If we put those tax breaks into research and development and innovation and technology, wouldn't we be doing something to grow our economy? It's just been misstep after misstep after misstep, and the response now is to say more austerity. No, what they need is a longer-term framework for achieving some kind of fiscal balance. This is a very, very severe austerity program, and it's hurting Kiwis. And I suppose the last point would be, I really worry that we're going to lose another generation of very talented New Zealanders offshore. And then we have so much trouble building back up from there.
Well, I came back, but it didn't make any difference. Catherine, I was going to say something more about Helen just not telling us what she really thinks, but she does, which is what I always love. Catherine, prediction.
My predictions, I guess, are based on what I think the story of the last 2 years has been, which is the rising temperatures, to the point in 2024 where we have climate scientists saying we don't actually, know what's going on. The temperatures have risen much more than have accelerated beyond what we expected. We don't really know what's happening. I think we've been, in that respect, in a kind of limbic period, a period of uncertainty where we don't know where this is all going and what the story is actually going to be. And my prediction is that in 2025, one way or another, I think we are going to come out of that in-between period. We're on the brink of some kind of transformation, and I don't know which way that's going to go. There's a lot of talk about a big, potentially global financial crisis emanating out of the US. That could be causative, but I also think that there's a lot of space there for people to start to really finally respond to the threats to our future. And the scale of the catastrophic risks that we're starting to face, I think will start to be brought home to people in 2025, and maybe we will finally start to react.
Catherine, thank you so much. I love also your use of the word limbic, which is very close to one of my favourites, liminal. Robert Patman, 2025 predictions, please.
Got a couple, actually. One, yes, I think Trump's foreign policy will be of enormous interest for the reasons that Helen went through. I'm also interested in the impact he's going to have on America, because it seems to me that at the moment his selection of loyalists for the top jobs rather than competence is a recipe for an outbreak of huge dysfunction within America. After all, he's talking about deporting 11 million people, and he wants to sack a lot of public servants. That's one thing. The other thing is a story that's been developing in the United States for the last 2 months. Hasn't had much attention, but I think is absolutely profound, and that is these swarming groups of UAPs or stroke drones, as the government's calling them. It's not just in the United States, it's happening in Russia, India, a number of other countries. Ellen Sofan, who was head of science, she may still be, head of science of NASA in 2015, predicted by 2025 human beings would discover non-human intelligence. So it's very interesting because at the moment there's just the beginnings of a recognition that the United States is completely powerless in the most sensitive military sites in the United States. These are nuclear sites largely. It's not confined to the United States. And there seems to be no way of tracking or stopping the activities of these drones, that the government calls them drones or UAPs.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting development, and that could have profound implications for the whole world.
Robert, we might circle back to that on the assumption we haven't pissed away all of our time up until the top of the hour, and bring Elaine in on that specific topic, because I have something I'd like to ask you both about that. Josie, 2025 predictions, please.
Well, I was looking at what Nostradamus said for 2025, and it was something about an asteroid collision and a pandemic plague-like outbreak. And I thought, well, you know, if he'd said air travel will get more expensive and celebrities will annoy us even more in 2025, I would have believed it, because I think those are two predictions that you can make. I mean, I agree with Helen, that I'm really worried for New Zealand that 2025 just continues the sort of deindustrialisation of New Zealand without any plan to look at what might replace our heavy energy industry. I've got cousins who worked in the oil and gas industry on Taranaki. I've got family that worked in the timber mills. You know, those jobs are going. And I don't know what's replacing them. And I don't know for how many years I've been talking about, as we all have, volume to value. And, R&D. Where is the practical vision, the vision and the implementation of a plan that's going to get us from that volume to value? And I just see it getting worse. I feel very pessimistic, actually, in 2025. And I think 2024 was the year of elections. We talked about that on the Hoon. The most historic number of elections ever in history in democracies. So what's happened? Many populists have been voted in, incumbents have been chucked out. 2025, those populists on the right, some on the left, are going to have to deliver, and they're not going to be able to, because they've promised fairies at the bottom of the garden, right? They've promised, low taxes, more spending, so on. So that's going to create more volatility. I think we're going to be in a very uncertain, volatile period.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Josie. Bernard.
So my prediction for next year is that there will be disquiet and potentially a revolt on the national backbench against Christopher Luxon's allowing of extreme coalition partners and ministers to make the party unpopular enough that either he is forced to do something substantial or he is replaced, because I think everyone is underestimating the amount of unhappiness there is in what I'd call the sort of true blue provincial aspects of the National Party, because of what's happening in the South Island with the Dunedin Hospital, with the various transport funding cuts from Simeon Brown, the speed increases from Simeon Brown. And if you talk to anyone in local government, they are beside themselves and feel completely under attack and in no position, let alone willingness, to help the government achieve what it needs, which is to build an awful lot of infrastructure, houses, all sorts of things. So I think there will be some sort of clash or eruption around that next year domestically. And next year, internationally, the thing that I'm most afraid of, focused on, is the German election coming up in, I think it's the end of February, where we'll find out if Alternative for Deutschland win some sort of control or access in the German government, and how that changes the equation in Europe. That's a entertaining 2025 for me.
Thanks, Bernard. I love your idea of a sort of political Fakari island, Fakari going on between those two. Elaine, predictions for 2025?
So I obviously, as a journalism professor and often practicing journalist, I'm very focused on that topic. And I can't help thinking that American journalism is facing a kind of crucial test this year to see how willing it is to stand up to the threats from this incoming president. And we've already seen ABC, as you've probably seen, paying $15 million for a defamation lawsuit that most lawyers felt they had absolutely every chance of winning had they gone to court. And I wonder how much more of that we're going to see, and how much actual reporting is going to be done into the things that really matter, including things like affordable housing and the cost of living and so on, versus reporting on the sort of sillier stories surrounding the presidency. And I hope it will.
And Elaine, do you think you will, just on that specific one about media, do you think you will see attempted prosecutions of journalists or a shift in defamation law in the United States in the early part of the Trump administration?
I mean, I'm much more concerned about people, self-censoring than I am about massive changes in the law. But I mean, of course, it's possible. I don't know, but people are speculating about all kinds of hideous things that could happen. I think it's more likely that there will be a sort of behavioural shift that will,
thank you so much. Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit like the anticipatory obeisance that Timothy Snyder talks about with all the American chief executives and so on sucking up to who. Okay, so my prediction for next year is that Trump might get an Abraham Accord that brings Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords, but that, according to MBS, would require a two-state solution. And if anybody would like just another podcast recommendation, if that's not too awful, David Remnick at the New Yorker this week did an absolutely stunning, well, it was a little bit, a little bit one side and the other, but with I forget his name, forgive me, the leading academic at Columbia around Israeli colonialism, the concept of Israel being a colonialist state, and the leading academic and journalist on the other side of it, on the Zionist side of it. And it was one of the most educational, because I had sort of picked up quite a lot about the Simon Sebag Montefiore view that Israel was not a colonialist state. And so it was really interesting to hear a world expert talking about that. Have I missed anybody on those ones? No. We tickety-boo. Excellent. Can we do a few minutes, or 12 minutes in fact, since we've got to the hour, about current events and current news? So let me just, Elaine, we want you to drone on a little bit. I saw a YouTube thing the other day of somebody in Washington, and what they were essentially showing was aircraft landing and taking off from Washington National and saying, Jesus Christ, there are drones. Well, they didn't say Jesus Christ. God, if my stepmother-in-law is listening, I don't regard that as a...
You don't need to swear.
Me. All right. Thank God, are you my stepmother-in-law now, Josie? Elaine,
No, Jodie is.
Please continue.
So, I mean, I never believed the conspiracy theory, ever. So, you're going to have to actually show me the green man before I'm going to think there's anything weird about these drones. I mean, I just think that 99.9% of these things are people seeing lights in the sky that are just planes, and that is basically what we're being told. Do I think that there's a communication error happening here because people probably know things they're not telling us? Probably. I mean, do I think they're running around looking for missing nuclear material? I mean, I suppose that's possible and sort of terrifying. But I don't really believe that either. I think I just believe that this is a sort of a weird phenomenon that will have a psychological explanation at some point But maybe Robert's right.
Elaine, what did you? We will get to Robert in a moment, but because I've got the mic. What do you did you make the other day? Wait, excuse me, Josie, I'm going to mute you for Christ's sake. Yes, I had the power. Elaine, what do you make of the Trump comment the other day that the Defense Department and the US government know more about this than they're letting on?
I mean, but that could mean anything. That could mean like they have more data than I do, which in the case of Trump is hardly much to shout about. I mean, so I just think that he enjoys warming his hands at the fire in any moment like this. So anything he says has to be discounted, and that's actually for him a very toned down version of what you might say because he's acting like a grown up. Right now.
Now, Robert, you've joined the group of space monitors here, because when Elaine was talking about people looking up into the sky, I was thinking that a significant percentage of people believe in that there's a big man in the sky who's looking after them. Robert, what do you make of the drone story?
Well, I've been looking into this for some time, and people like Harvey Loeb, Professor Harvey Loeb, Harvard, and Professor Nolan at Stanford, these are serious, hard science, empirically driven people, and they're not buying the explanations coming out of Washington at all. And by the way, this is not one-off. This is not just in the United States. This is a global development. And lots of people, former US pilots, both commercial and military, have said they haven't been able to say anything because it was a career-ending move to report such things.
Yeah.
But once they're out of the service, they talk quite rapidly. I think when we think about the Earth's environment, the fact that space is infinite, then we shouldn't necessarily assume that we're the only species, around. So we shouldn't be. We should at least be open to possibilities. But I agree with Elaine. There's loads of people milking this and coming up with incredible theories. But quite frankly, the administration has done itself no favors. First of all, suggesting off the record there were Chinese and Russian drones, and then people said, "Well, you're letting them just fly in with no interference at all, no attempt to stop them." And then they changed it, and then they said, "Oh, these drones are lawful and legal."
So how do they know?
So that was the latest one from John Kirby.
I
and now he's getting savage. They're saying, "Why are you holding classified briefings if this is all just American and legal?" So the administration is in utter. It's a debacle. It's utter knots. They've got themselves in a complete mess. And I'm just interested to see how this develops, because the administration seems very reluctant to talk about it. When they've been incoherent. And so it's just an interesting thing to observe. And the other interesting thing has been that a number of US politicians, mainly mayors and governors, are getting increasingly irate about this, because many people in New Jersey are extremely worried about these national security breaches, which the US government, remember how excited the US government was about shooting down a Chinese balloon? Well, now you've got swarms of drones over nuclear sites, and the American government seems to be completely relaxed about it. Well, a lot of their citizens don't seem to be in places like New Jersey. So this is interesting.
I think what's going to happen, though, Robert, is if they don't land until after, I think it's the 20th of January, they're going to say, "Take me to your leader." They're going to take one look at Trump and then turn around and go back again. Helen, one of the things, and I had to you and Robert about this, one of the things that's so striking about Trump at the moment is the extent to which he is already running the world. I mean, we've just seen Bernard and my old boss, Chrystia Freeland, quitting as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, quitting the Canadian government, probably putting the skates under the Governor of the great state of Canada, Justin Trudeau. I mean, I forget the name of it. There's a piece of American legislation which is supposed to stop US presidential candidates, or before the inauguration, interfering in international affairs. What do you think about what he's up to?
Well, if that exists, it's more honoured in the breach, right? I mean, I think Canadians should feel highly offended about the description of their Prime Minister as the governor of a kind of like a subnational jurisdiction. And there was even a suggestion, I think, in one of the Trump tweets that they were so like the US, they should be the next state of the US of America. So all a bit odd. But no, look, I mean, obviously the Biden administration is in its dying days. They can't really take any major decisions. And all attention has turned to Trump. And what we all would agree about Trump is he's a disruptor. And so what's he going to do? And he's got us all guessing and all talking about it. And hang on for the ride. We're in the cheap seats down here in New Zealand. But one way or another, you're all affected by the disruption that it causes. So I think 2025 is going to be a roller coaster news year. I mean, there's one other point I'd like to make before we finish, and that is, for me, it's not just because I've got a short attention span, but for me, the event of the year has been what's happened in Syria. You saw heads of government fall during the so-called Arab Spring that quickly became the Arab Winter, and Assad sat there. He was prepared to kill and torture as many as it took to put down rebellions. He never regained control of his whole country, but there he sat in Baghdad in splendour. And in a week it was all over. Aleppo fell, Hamas fell, Homs fell, and they were in Damascus, and he's on a helicopter out from the Russian base. I mean, it is absolutely incredible news and should be registered in this last podcast.
And one thing I'd say about that, it reveals the fragility of these autocracies, and that we think are these eternal regimes that will never fall, and then they fall within days. And I think the fatal flaw of an autocracy is that your police and your loyalists and your soldiers, whoever's keeping you safe, are also members of the public who have families who have been affected by a particularly awful and violent autocracy. So at some point, the house of cards falls, and that's hopeful, right? It's a hopeful end to 2024.
God, Josie, you're a Hallmark carded person.
Can I interrupt Peter?
Yes. Go ahead, Bernard. Oh,
go ahead, Bernard. Please do.
Come on, Bernard.
Which is that
I've got the pip now.
No, it's all right, Peter. I just wanted to say that point about everything looks fine until it doesn't sounds a lot like what Hemingway said about bankruptcy.
Yes.
I think about finance a lot, and bankruptcy is that thing where everything's absolutely slowly, and then bang, it goes quickly. And I think that there's a lot of natural phenomena and social phenomena which are a lot like bankruptcies. Everything looks absolutely fine, and things seems like nothing's ever going to change until the moment it all just collapses because of
and the other aspect about that, Bernard, that you and I know from our past, and Elaine knows because the three of us were at Reuters at one point, is it's never fully priced into the markets. So whenever one of your colleagues says, "Oh yeah, we're totally expecting the Third World War," and excuse me, when it happens, it happens. Elaine, what do you want to address this aspect of all of these people, whether it's business people, but particularly international people coming to see Trump at Mar-a-Lago? I find it utterly grotesque. What do you think?
I mean, yes, but I mean, what choice do they have? I mean, I guess that's the flip side of it. He's going to be the president. You got to talk to the guy. You can't. It's like it's the same conundrum we have as journalists. You can't ignore what he says. You know, I mean, I don't know what to say. It leaves a very strange. I mean, to go back to what Josie was saying, I mean, Syria is definitely my story of the year, and it does. I mean, obviously, you can draw parallels between Syria and the United States, but I mean, it takes me back to the fall of the Berlin Wall. You just, things can happen, and at the drop of a hat when you don't expect them, and we don't know how. I mean, this presidency may not be as stable as it seems right now. We don't know what's going to happen. You could make all kinds of terrible mistakes.
I wish I could be as calm as you, Robert.
I think, I just want to say that I think the fall of the Assad regime, yes, a really major geopolitical event, but it's also, I think, if you like, a cautionary tale for Mr. Trump. He may think he runs the world, but it was Turkey who moved things in that, and Turkey has got on the record, by the way, many people miss this comment from Mr. Erdogan, has said that his government will not accept any settlement in Ukraine in which Ukraine's full territorial integrity is not restored. In other words, they won't accept a land for peace deal in the Ukraine. So that's very interesting. Turkey has emerged as an interesting geopolitical player, and certainly has been a bit of a problem for Mr. Putin recently. I mean, this is a huge geopolitical setback for Putin in Syria. And I think it could have internal ramifications. And, you know, the point you're making about autocracy, I mean, we can't rule out the possibility one day we're going to wake up in the not too distant future and Mr. Putin may be on the way out. So, you know, this could happen.
Yeah, I did like the attack, or it's amused, sorry, that's a terrible thing. The attack on the head of the chemical weapons program in Russia this week from the Ukrainians was pretty innovative. Now, I'm going to do something we hadn't planned, because I just thought of it now. And I know you're all dying to go off and find out how many people have been killed on the roads, or which bus stop Christopher Luxon doesn't want to have a grass roof put on. I'd like you to quickly just give us a sentence, because you've got quite a lot of people online at the moment. Just give us a sentence about what you're up to, what you're thinking. Catherine.
Well, what I'm up to, I'm thinking a lot about, people aren't going to want to hear this from me, another depressing thing to say, but I'm thinking a lot about the way that we are consistently underestimating the risks of climate catastrophe and so on, and I'm starting to think about what that looks like if you live through it, and how we deal with that. So,
Josie, you got squeezed today, other than spanking me on the botty most of the time. Carry on. I'm sure, and also could you mention what your charity does? Because you did get tiny bit squeezed today, and I want to explain what you're doing now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm running Child Fund with a team of people, which works mostly in the Pacific. And actually, the interesting thing about that, Peter, is trying to shift charities, New Zealand charities, to get behind the Pacific's own plans. And when we're talking about, you know, stuff around development, stuff around global politics as well, I mean, it's so important that any nation that goes into a country that needs support in whatever way, whether it's poverty or whether it's security, that you understand, just as we do if we do regional development, you've got to be led by the local community. So I'm really trying to shift Child Fund, and it's already doing this with some great people there, and our teams in the Pacific basically run the programs that we do. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. A lot of really basic stuff like clean water, getting nutrition to babies when they're born because of the high rates of stunting. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very practical, but I think that vision of being locally led is so important to success.
Josie, is that what you'd like to say as the thing that's on top of mind right now?
Actually, the thing that was I didn't even know you were going to ask this, Peter.
No, nor did I.
No, the thing that is on top of my mind, actually, thinking about that. So, you know, the Pacific is like our shared home. It's an extension of our home here. I don't see it as a foreign affairs relationship, even though, of course, it is. But we have such a strong Pacific community. So what I was actually thinking about was that Dave Latelli's food bank got saved at the last minute, just before Christmas. And you know, I know Dave, and his food bank does amazing work. And he takes that same approach of pride in his community. You know, this isn't about vulnerability, it's about pride. And I'm just so pleased that you know, some donors stepped up and gave him some money. So that, yeah, working with Pacific communities in New Zealand and in the Pacific, it's a shared home.
Thank you. And yes, we do recognise what happened in Vanuatu over this week.
Yeah, we're working on
I don't think we have I'm sure you are, but we don't have a good way on the podcast to necessarily add value to that. Elaine, what's on top of your mind right now?
So sort of in a similar vein, will be working very hard teaching young journalism undergraduate students this coming spring semester at Indiana University, and I'm very focused on the idea of community-based journalism and on how I can help, how my students and I can help our communities tell their stories, and how I can help my students learn how to do that themselves and pass that on. Because I think what we're going to need is a whole country of people telling stories of what's happening here.
Great. Well, you can collaborate with us, because we've just had 14 community newspapers shut down in New Zealand by the biggest publisher. One has now been saved in Taupo. Bernard, what's on top of your mind? You can guess who I'm going to for the final top of her mind. He hinted. Yeah.
Yeah. What's on top of my mind right now is the beautiful sounds in the background that you have there.
Yeah.
I didn't. I feel. Yeah. Carry on.
And the sea, and the crickets, and to hear Josie talk about the Pacific, because in the background is the Pacific.
Bernard, you're a poet.
Yeah, and I have been thinking about this a lot. It feels at the moment like we're in a period of fragility and crisis and risk. And whenever I feel like that, I always go outside and try to suck up some air and some sound from nature, and to hear that sound in the background of the sea makes me realize nature will win in the end, whether we like it or not, and I hope that it can be a good winning. The other thing I'd like to just say that is on top of my mind, I am so pleased that there are so many people watching this. We've had such a great response from everyone who's on the podcast, and next year my own personal aim, which I hope to forget within about 30 seconds, is
Too late. Carry on.
too late, is that we get 1,000 people onto this final end of year podcast for the kaka. I don't think that's too outrageous, and I just wanted to say thank you very much to everyone here who's on the podcast, all those people who are listening.
We're not finished yet. I've still got to do the skateboarding dog, and we've got Robert and Helen to come.
And I'm thrilled to bits with how it's gone. Thank you, Peter.
Good, Robert.
What's on my mind is we actually live in a world in which we are heading, I think 2024 has been another important year for shifting towards a new international order. And it's an order that's been described as non-polar. That is to say, it can't be dominated, the world we're living in, by a superpower, however powerful. And what I think is really important, and this has been on my mind a lot recently, is that small countries and middle powers must start exercising greater agency. Instead of kissing the ring, either in Washington, D.C. or Beijing, neither of those two countries can unilaterally fix most of the problems that we face. They can't fix climate change. They can't fix global pandemics. They can't even fix transnational terrorism. The Bush administration had a go at that and failed. And they can't fix problems of an extended world global economy. So at some point, the penny may drop amongst countries like New Zealand and other middle powers that they actually have quite a lot of clout if they act in this fashion. And I hope they do in 2025.
Is it possible that you've got a book coming out soon on that very topic?
Well, that's why I've been thinking about it. But you're quite right, Peter, that there's some self-interest there. But I genuinely believe, I think Helen may agree with me, that we need to have fundamental reforms in the UN, because at the moment the veto is acting as an agent of destabilisation in global security rather than stabilisation. So I would like the middle powers and the small powers to start demanding changes to institutions which on a daily basis are infringing their interests.
Yeah. Robert, you're always so fantastic. You've been on almost all the Hoons this year. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I would like to tell everybody that I'm just absolutely terrified about the Trump period. I'm trying to shift my behaviour from reading the news at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning and midnight because I don't think I'll burst a gasket. And I'm searching for ways to be relevant and sensible in this, whether it's helping Elaine, not that she needs help with her local journalism project, or helping Bernard with the Hoon, because I really like the connection. And somebody's made a fantastic typo, which is they said that they appreciate our insights, and they've said INCITES, and we're going to incite you. Helen, would you like to give us what's on top of your mind at the moment, apart from going and pouring your father a gin and tonic or something?
Well, my answer is in two parts. Firstly, my summer is dominated by palliative care of my dad, who, as some of you know, is 102 years, 9 months and 11 days old.
Wow.
And he keeps asking how far away Christmas is, so we hope to be there. but he's very resilient. But, things don't go so well when you're at such an advanced age. So I'm sort of hovering all summer. Secondly, I'm getting ready for the first events of next year. I make only short dashes now because of the situation at home, but I will go to the World Economic Forum in Davos, and I'll be very interested to see what the readout is there from the people who come from governments and the big NGOs and the multilaterals and the business community. What are they thinking about this disruptive year ahead? And I go on from that to the Norwegian Development Agency's conference on financing for development. There's a big UN conference coming up in Seville mid-year, which will look at, the resources available for financing for development. And the Norwegian conference is a forerunner to that. So getting ready for those big events will be what I'll do when I'm not, carrying in the hot drinks today.
Helen, can I just say one thing? That one of the ideas I've been working on for a long time is to do a Pacific Davos, which would be based here. We've got Queenstown, which even looks like Davos. That I think there's a real appetite for a Pacific Southern Hemisphere view of the issues that get discussed at Davos. And I think that would be really powerful.
Josie, I'm sorry. The WT, Helen's already a bloody acolyte or a cipher of the WEF, and I mean, she'll be doing 15-minute cities and all of the other WEF control mechanisms. Helen,
that was just a sea of acronyms, Peter. I've lost you there.
and some initialisms. Helen,
great idea, Josie. Great idea.
It's almost as good as my idea. It's very similar, actually. It's excellent. But I have an idea of bringing the Perugia Journalism Conference to Whanganui. To alternate with the Whanganui Literary Festival. Helen, the other thing I was going to note was that, of course, as I understand it, you're an extremely good and active skier. And the only time I went to Davos, to the WEF, possibly the best part was the skiing after it all. It's very nice there.
Well, we do make provision for half a day's skiing, but the half day I allocated last year, it was -18 with no snow and damn miserable. So.
All right. Well, I hope I haven't blown your gaff. Shall I do a quick talk? So, thank you everybody. Shall I do the skateboarding dog, Bernard? Yeah, it's not the sort of annual skateboarding, but thank you very much everybody for appearing on the Hoon this year. I know there's some irritations that people have, but and I'm the main irritant, but thank you very much, everybody. Actually, that reminds me, my father used to say, allegations have been made and we intend to find the alligators. But anyway, let me just...
Congratulations, you two. It's a great success. Well done.
It really has.
So the best story I've seen lately was the Spanish man who was convicted of murdering and burying 2 people in a little village, because for the first time in 15 years, the Google mapping truck drove past just as he was putting the bodies in their bags into the back of his car to go and bury.
I don't know what to feel about that now, Peter.
No, exactly.
I'm laughing and crying.
I know. Isn't that like life? Look, thank you everybody, and Helen, thanks for being such a good egg on this. And all of you, really. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Peter and everyone. Ka kite anō, everyone. Have a great Christmas and New Year. Please have a great time with your loved ones. And we'll see you all next year on January the...
15th, you said?
15th.
16th.
January the 16th. Thursday, January the 16th.
Yeah.
We will be back.
And if there's big news, Bernard might condescend once at least to let us do a emergency podcast. And also, can I just say thank you so much to Simon? Bernard and I would like to say thank you so much to Simon Josie, our producer, who has made us seem quasi-professional. and now has an AI device to edit out the word Jesus from the main production, which is why the main production is 11 minutes shorter than this one.
Thank goodness. Luckily, God only listens to the recorded version, so we're fine.
Actually, that's not what he told me, but thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.
See you, kids. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Alrighty, we have stopped recording. Thank you very much, everyone. Lovely
to
do that, and I really appreciate it. We shall.
Yeah, just
I hope
stay.
you all